Hey there, welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating concepts from Charlie Munger's Poor Charlie's Almanack, the reward and punishment superresponse tendency. This is all about how powerful incentives can be in shaping human behavior, sometimes in ways we don't even realize. In this video, we'll break down what this tendency is, how it affects our decisions, and explore real-world examples from business, investing, and everyday life. So if you're ready to learn how to use and avoid the influence of incentives, stick around. So what exactly is the reward and punishment superresponse tendency? According to Charlie Munger, this tendency explains why people's behavior is influenced far more by incentives and punishments than by logic or rational arguments. In other words, people respond intensely to the possibility of gaining rewards or avoiding punishments. It's a simple concept but incredibly powerful. Munger even says never ever think about something else when you should be thinking about the power of incentives. That's how crucial this principle is. At its core, this tendency is all about motivation. If you can understand what drives people, you can predict and influence their behavior much more effectively. Let's look at some real-world examples to understand how incentives drive behavior. Sales commissions in business. Imagine you're a salesperson. If you earn a commission on every sale, you're naturally going to work harder to close deals. In fact, companies often use tiered commission structures to push salespeople even further. The more you sell, the higher your percentage. Real-world example. In the 1990s, Sears offered auto mechanics a commission on repairs. Unfortunately, this led to mechanics recommending unnecessary repairs just to earn more commissions. Eventually, the program had to be scrapped due to customer backlash. Investment banking bonuses. In the finance world, investment bankers often receive huge year-end bonuses based on the deals they close. This can lead to aggressive behavior and sometimes unethical practices, as we saw during the 2008 financial crisis. Bankers were incentivized to issue risky loans and mortgage-backed securities because they earned massive bonuses up front, even if those loans were likely to default later. Healthcare and quotas. In some hospitals, doctors are incentivized with bonuses based on the number of procedures they perform. While this can lead to greater productivity, it also creates a risk of unnecessary treatments, a classic case of perverse incentives. While incentives can drive positive behaviors, they can also lead to perverse incentives, situations where people act against the best interests of the organization or society. Example: the Cobra Effect in India. This is one of the most famous examples of perverse incentives. During British rule in India, the government offered a bounty for every dead cobra to reduce the population of venomous snakes. Sounds reasonable, right? So what happened? People started breeding cobras just to kill them and claim the bounty. When the government realized this and stopped the bounty, people released the cobras into the wild, making the problem worse than before. Another example is Wells Fargo scandal. To meet aggressive sales targets, Wells Fargo employees opened millions of unauthorized bank accounts for customers. The incentive structure was so intense that employees felt compelled to cheat to keep their jobs. In the end, the bank paid over $3 billion in fines and severely damaged its reputation. One more example: the rat bounty in French colonial Vietnam. The French colonial government in Vietnam offered a bounty for each rat killed, requiring rat catchers to present the rat's tail as proof. Rat catchers started cutting off tails and releasing the rats so they could breed and produce more tails, making the problem worse. Perverse incentives show why it's not enough to simply offer rewards. You need to think through the long-term consequences of those incentives. Now let's talk about punishments and their impact. On the flip side, punishments can be just as powerful in shaping behavior, sometimes even more so. The threat of losing something can trigger a psychological effect known as loss aversion, where people work harder to avoid losses than to achieve gains. For example, fines for lateness at daycares. In a famous study, a daycare introduced a fine for parents who picked up their children late. Surprisingly, late pickups increased. Why? Parents saw the fine as a fee rather than a punishment and felt less guilty about being late. This is a classic example of how poorly designed punishments can backfire. Another example: prison sentences for financial crimes. Severe punishments for insider trading or accounting fraud are intended to deter financial crimes. However, if the perceived reward is high enough, some individuals still take the risk, highlighting how critical it is to balance the reward-punishment equation. So, how can you design incentives that actually work? Munger suggests a few key principles. Align incentives with long-term goals. Make sure that short-term rewards do not conflict with long-term success. Avoid perverse incentives. Think carefully about unintended consequences before implementing an incentive plan. Balance rewards and punishments. A combination of rewards for desired behavior and penalties for undesirable actions is usually the most effective. Good example is Berkshire Hathaway's management style. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger use a decentralized model at Berkshire Hathaway, allowing managers to make their own decisions. Incentives are tied to long-term results, ensuring that managers act in the best interest of shareholders. Understanding incentives is also crucial for investors. When evaluating a company, Munger advises looking at the incentives of the management team. If executives receive huge bonuses based on short-term stock performance, that's a red flag. Many of the financial institutions that failed during the 2008 crisis had compensation structures that rewarded risk-taking. In contrast, companies with incentives tied to long-term metrics like cash flow or return on equity tend to make more sustainable decisions. Incentives are a powerful tool, but like any tool, they can be used wisely or foolishly. By understanding the reward and punishment super-response tendency, you can design better incentives, make smarter investments, and avoid costly mistakes. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the subscribe icon for more insights into human psychology and investing. Thanks for watching!